So, tonight we're going to be talking about Dragonscale. This instructions was done by Blue Buddha Boutique, which is no longer in existence. I wish they still were in a way. In a way, I'm kind of glad that they're not. Mainly because their rings were on the high side or the higher price side. Um, Rebecca, which was the creator and owner of Blue Buddha, was the one who actually wrote up these instructions. If you can get a copy of these instructions, they are some of the best, color coded, and they actually show you how to loop through the rings. I'm going to go through it, but first we're going to talk about ring sizes, and you're dealing with two different sizes of rings. You have a big ring and then a small ring. Now, I have several different ones put out here, and usually the recommended ones is to give you a little bit of room on the inside when you place it in there. And if you notice there, the black one has some space on the inside of that blue one. Now, on this bracelet, which I made, I actually worked with different sizes of rings until I could get this nice tight weave. And I settled on this copper size. I can get you the size of the rings that I use, and I'll actually publicize that on YouTube when I post this. It just has just basically a fingernail room of space around that ring. So your tolerances are very tight, and to me it creates a tighter pattern. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to close off 3 large rings. Now, we're doing it just like the instructions. We're doing just a 3 wide. My bracelet, which is more geared towards a larger wrist, is actually a 4 wide. And I've seen larger than that, and I've even seen people do a whole shirt of Dragonscale. So I'm dealing with aluminum, anodized blue aluminum for the larger rings, and they are 1/4 18 gauge. And if you notice, I do not have all my gloves tonight. That's mainly because these rings are very easy to manipulate. So my 3 rings closed. Now I'm doing it different than her instructions. I'm actually closing my big rings, and then I'm going to connect them with my copper rings. So, got the first one here, and we're just going to slip it onto this one. We're actually going to get 2 rings to this one copper. Like so. That actually gives us this portion right here. copper ring. Now this is a more advanced weave, but I personally don't find it that bad because once you get it started, it becomes simple. So now we're going to close off 2 more of our blue rings. And I'm going to move the sheet, move it up on the sheet here so you can see what I'm doing. I'm actually going to lay it on top of here. And this is where the difficulty comes in, because now we're going to have to weave aluminum ring through this copper ring and this copper ring and have it on top of these, which is this step right here. So that we have a pattern like this on the bottom. So I'm actually going to kind of open it up really nice so I have a little bit more room to work with. And it's kind of like an operation. So we got that one. Now we just have to come over here and this is where my needle nose really come in handy with the curved end. I'm actually going to use the paper to turn it to get a different angle. My finger's probably going to be in the way here. Kind of hard not to have them not in the way. Okay, have it through, and once I close this, we'll set it down and you can see what I just did here. Okay. Now, it's up on the white part. Up at the top, we're now at this section right here. Now, her instructions is to tie a wire around this ring right here to mark the back end. That's one way of doing it. What I'm going to do is I am actually going to use one of my black aluminum rings to mark that I had setting out here. Don't want to use that one. Why do I have the wire cutters up here? I do not know. this is going to be the most time-consuming portion of the dragon weave, is the setup. The reason behind that is that once you have this basically organized and done, everything is going to just fall into place. Now, for this next procedure, we're actually adding on copper rings to your 2 outside rings. So I'm going to get my 3 rings ready, and they're going to be in the copper, and that's the smaller diameter ring. A little bit of coffee here. My hands are not shaky enough. Coffee always makes it better. Okay. Now, also the way that you position these are going to make a difference. So basically, they're going to have to lay on top of these copper rings that we put on earlier. And that's going to be very important. When we go on to the next step. Okay. So, make sure we get our alignment. Make sure it looks good. The center one is the one that has to go through this ring, through those 2, but made on top of these 2 copper rings. And this is where it becomes tricky, as well as the initial connection, because it's like a slight surgical procedure. And I'm going to grab some of my tiny needle nose pliers for this, because you're going in and come out on top right there. Is in. Now I'm going to move it over here and see that copper is resting on top of these 2 copper rings, and they're only attached to these 2. Now we're going to do the outside one. It's on the top there. Now, at this point, what I like to do, because I now have this started, on her instructions, she actually has you flipping it over like I would. So basically, I'm going to turn this over. Those copper rings that should have been on the top of the other ones are now on the bottom. And we want to make sure that they're oriented correctly. So, this is when the fun begins. It's a sequence of 2, 2, 3, 3. Now, so 2 small rings, 2 large rings, 3 small rings, and then 3 large rings. And that is the sequence of the weave, and that continues on and on and on. And we're going to go through a few sequences of that so that you can see what's going on. Now, if you come in late, I will be posting this up on YouTube. Usually it'll post in the next day, maybe a few days after that. But what we're going to do now is take our small rings. We're going to open them up. And they are going to be, and we want to get it big enough to go through that aluminum, is that we're going to be putting it through this section right here on the bottom. I'm going to go through the blue rings, and we're basically connecting up the inside of the 2 blue rings. And then we're going to close off this one. I have to flip it the other way. Nope. I'm going to correct the other way. Oh, there we go. Now, on this, it's basically going to be on the bottom and basically going through that blue ring on the back. And sometimes you have to manipulate that ring so that it sits correctly. The more that you add on to it, the easier that the rings set into place. And that's why it's considered a difficult weave, is because the beginning part is a lot of times very frustrating. Now, there are other weaves that make this one pale in comparison, and I know most people in the mailing groups would agree with me. And that's just because the start of this, once you have the start done, it is simple. just trying to get this one on the side here on the proper side, because it's going to be very important for our next set of rings. And go ahead and put one in to kind of lock it in. So now, going around the center one, we're going to the outside rings, and if it would settle down and behave itself, my life easy. Okay. I think I'm going to deal with this side first, because it seems to be getting out of whack the most. Wrong. This one needs to be on top of this center one right here. And yes, this is the frustrating portion of it. Settle down. So go through the center. Copper ring. And we're going to catch on to this outside copper ring. If it will behave itself, which it is not, but we're going to make it behave. Probably should have done a bigger ring size for this. Just hear Daniel yelling at me, "What are you doing?" Fortunately, no one's in the feed right now to see this embarrassment moment. Yay. How to fail at Dragon Weave. I should just give up now. Just gonna move this one out. I'm gonna evaluate our scenario here. just a mucky mess. See, this is what I get for not practicing this weave before I started streaming. Just like a gamer playing a game online, one should practice before trying to hurt themselves. So my biggest problem is these two outside ones want to play escape artists on me. And like I said, this is the beginning part. And this is where it gets most people to the point of frustration of never wanting to do this weave again. Right here is off kilter as well on that side. I don't know if y'all could see where the overlap is right here. That ring is supposed to be sitting on top of that one. So we're going to try to force it onto there, but it's going to take some finagling. Or it might take me just to take out the ring and put it back in again. But I think we got it there. And let me get this one on top of there too. Okay. Like I said, this is the frustrating part. And be expected your first time to have to take this apart and go at it again several times because of the rings not behaving. Fortunately, this is relatively soft metal and I can do a lot of things with my fingers. This is more for example and not really for wear. For someone to wear this, I'd almost want to do this soft metal with a harder metal. Let's see if we can't find that closure there. Don't want to lose my back ring here either. Okay. I've been on for a little bit. I think I'm just going to stop this and try to fix this real quick off camera for a bit. So I have gotten to this point. After, and I still have one kind of messed up right here. This one's not laid correctly. And I'm going to have to pull it out and insert it where it is correctly laid in there. So I'm looking for the sleeve. On the sleeve. Put my finger up here. Get it open. I'm going to back it out some, but not all the way. Just enough. Get in there. Get back around. There we go. Now you probably have to zoom up, but the biggest problem with Dragonscale is that the layers of your rings, of your small and your ones, have to be a specific layer. We're now going with 3 copper rings. Let me fix the window here. Sorry about that. Well, let me just down to here and then bring the whole thing up. There we go. There we go. Now, your biggest problem on Dragonscale is between your different layers here. And it's kind of like you have the copper that's laying this way, and then your aluminum, which is laying the opposite direction and being sandwiched between each other. You'll note that the aluminum rings aren't actually connected to each other, they're actually connected to the copper and vice versa. And that's what kind of gives it the kind of scale look right there, giving it the Dragonscale name. For those who were looking for me on Twitch, sorry, had things come up, and my frustration with this weave just got the best of me, so I just stopped streaming at that point. But I will edit together the 2 pieces here, give you an idea of what's going on. But your sequence, and there I'll put in some good links to some instructions in the bottom. Also, if you like this video, I know it's kind of dry and boring, but if you like it, subscribe below. Should be down somewhere down here, I think. So subscribe. I really appreciate it. And just to let you know, I did make a mistake on the Byzantine, and that was 5/16, 14 gauge that I used on that. That's what these are. So I had to go back and check the order just to make sure. Sometimes the sizing chart off of the ring lord isn't 100% accurate. I was kind of basing it off of that. And like I said, I'll get you the ring sizes of these, and I'll verify them with some of my previous orders that I did specifically for this. And usually what I prefer is stainless steel for the 1/4 inch. What I'd ordered for this project initially was 5/32 rings, which are, I believe these, nope, yeah, nope, not those. Where is one of my 5/32 rings? Oh, there it is. It's like the black here. This is a 5/32 20 gauge, and then the 1/4 inch is a 18th gauge, and that gives you a little bit looser, gives you a little bit more play, so you won't have to go through the frustration. And if you're doing this for the first time, you kind of want a looser ring, so I would most definitely go with a 5/32 ring for your smaller ring at 20 gauge, and then for your larger ring, just like I'm using on these aluminum here. Bring those. I don't know if you can see right there. Which these are a 1/4 inch 18 gauge. So. And that'll give you a little bit of wiggle room so that you can get the pattern down, and then I'll give you the tighter fitting for the inner ring. And you can get all those rings at the Ring Lord. I'm not pushing them. There's other ring providers, CNT. But if you're starting out, you don't need really expensive rings. You just need something to play with, and that's the whole start of this. Don't feel like you're getting frustrated. You don't need expensive pliers either. There's actually a starter kit off the Ring Lord, and I would highly recommend it. It will get your feet wet. It will give you some multiple rings to play with. It might not give you rings for all the different weaves, and you might have to spend a little bit more money to get specific ones. But you can do the basic weaves like the Byzantine, start off there, and then work yourself to something like the Dragonscale. And the Dragonscale is used in a lot of jewelry pieces for accent on the necklaces. Bracelets. And like I said, I've seen someone do a shirt with it, but that was a lot of work because Dragonscale is a little bit time consuming because you always have to go back and check how they're laying down, and then if you're doing big sheets, I applaud the guy for doing it. Or the gal, I'm not sure if it was male or female, so you'll notice in chainmail area there's probably more women out there doing it than men. I'm not sure, but I do know that a lot of women do a lot of better closures than I do. My wife actually does better closures at times than I do. So we got in our 3 rings, and I need to get that one down below. See how it traveled up on top? This one needs to be down below. I'm trying to get there. There we go. Come on, get there. Okay. A little center ring gets into its muscle place. So I got my 3. And now I do my 3 big rings. So let's do those. And this pattern starts emerging. You start to see it. Is what I call the 3, 3, 2, 2, or 2, 2, 3, 3. Might want to open it up just a little bit more. So, on the 3 rings are connecting to the 2 smaller ones. In the center. I'm not really worried about my closures on this, as this is just a demonstration piece that much, so that you can get the gist of the idea. If I was actually going to do this for a piece for sale, you want to make sure that your closures are good and tight. And I have to watch myself with the aluminum, because I have a tendency, especially after working with stainless steel for so long, to overwork the aluminum, and nice nifty little things like shattering of the aluminum. Surgical, and then we'll get a close. Kind of like doing surgical work on a dragon, but not as dangerous. If you play D&D and you make deals with dragons, trust me, it all turns out bad. Really bad. Taxes get hired. Dragons want gold. Make sure that. Flip this up. You back in there. Now, I'm having to remind myself to actually talk, or you'd see me concentrate. Now, if I was streaming, I'd also have to check on my chat line and check on that, which is something I'm not doing because I kind of need to concentrate on this week because I haven't done it in a while. So I'm sorry that I did not do this one live. I will try to do a live demonstration of this later on. I kind of need the practice first. Just to let you know, doing chainmail can be as cheap as going down to a hardware store and buying some wire and spooling it up on a screwdriver and cutting it off and making your own rings. That's actually how I got started. Just seeing if I could do it. And I kind of got hooked. Then I found the Ring Lord. And I made an order. At that time, they were only based in Canada. So every package had to go through customs. So that was a nifty experience. Had to wait a little bit longer for it. At least these aren't launching into the living room. Yay. Now, like I said, once you get past that first initial bit, and it can cause you to curse like a sailor, get frustrated, and just completely give up. Be patient with it, and it's about positioning the rings in there, and that's what this first initial part is. Because once you have more room on the piece itself, it starts becoming easier and easier to manipulate. I think that's the correct word. And then we're going to go ahead and close that ring. So pretty. Whoa. 1 second here. Well, it just wasn't a night to record or stream. Just tell you, sometimes you just have great nights and other times you don't. Now, I just connected my 2 copper and I'm going to get those all seated in there. And you're starting to see how the pattern is starting to go. I'm going to put in my 3 rings. Or actually, no, I'm going to put in my 2 big rings, sorry. 2 big rings because I just put in my 2 small, so I got 2 big. Probably going to think I'm crazy. Might just need to voice over this whole thing. But I'm not, because it's going to be funnier this way, and some other people can laugh at me, and I don't really care, because you might laugh at me and you might learn something at the same time. I'm not doing this to get famous. I'm not doing this for those people who want to ridicule or make fun of me because I'm doing something unusual. I'm doing this so that the people that do want to learn this can have a tutorial on how to make this chainmail, which is a very unique weave. And I've had several people ask me, hey, why don't you do a tutorial on this? I've even had people ask me if I would teach them how to do this. Usually I just point them to the instructions. They get frustrated. And then they come to me and they sit down for a while and go, how did you do this? How did you get past this point? And the major frustration, which is the part that I showed you at the beginning, and I'm going to flip over the paperwork here in just a second so you can see once more what I call the horror portion. And I'll actually, hopefully I can bring this up so that you can see it a little bit better in the camera. I wish I had a better camera set up, but right now I just don't have one. Another thing that's inspired me to do this is watching all the other YouTubers and streamers that are actually teaching people how to do different traits. I have a good friend. He actually twitches leather, and see, I overworked it. That overworked real bad. He actually does leather work, and he's been helping me with a costume piece of mine, which is a generic Jedi's belt. And those belts are kind of unique, so. And I wanted one that would look really good. Look at me one, the one that I bought off of Etsy. It was a nice belt, nice leather belt. And it served me for 4 years, but the ends have started to fray because she did not finish the edges, and it has a tendency to wear my linen on the inside and wear it down more because she did not line the inside of the belt, which, if I am thinking correctly, she was just getting started at it, and we all start somewhere, and I helped her out by purchasing a belt, and I think I think she even raised her price on the belts later on, but yeah. her husband makes some great lightsabers. So, there we go. Now, I don't know if you can see that real good. You're starting to see the pattern emerge. And if you notice, that was my 2 and 2. And the next step would be 3 rings and 3 rings. So you got 3 small rings and then 3 large rings. And then you continue that process. So if you can get past this initial portion, so I'm going to flip over the instructions here so you can see what's going on here. If you can get past this portion in here and actually get to the main weave, you're going to be just fine. It's just this step 1 through 4 that is your roughest part. Now, I don't know if anyone has any of these instructions left, but there is a lot of good information on it. She even goes into speed weaving. I don't really like doing that. She even has instructions on it, but it also goes into finishing up the weave. So, I don't know if I still have the PDF for this, and personally I don't know if I have the rights for it to sell it. I'm just showing it. I'm giving the rights up here, and I'll put that in the notes. But I know there's other ones that do similar instructions that Blue Buddha Batik did as well. And I will put those links in there. The Chainmail Guild also has this weave in their library of weaves, okay? So, this is just her tutorial. It's what I had handy. It's what I reference whenever I do this weave. The main reason is that she did beautiful pictures on it. There's even some 3-dimensional instructions that show a little bit better color coding each level. A great thing about this weave is that you can actually do color coding and actually put somebody's name inside that band. If you do it correctly, there is actually kind of like craft paper that can basically help you out with those designs. I want you to go out there, look into that, experiment. Chainmail is fun. It seems like tedious at first, but if you're a person that likes weaving, if you're a person that is looking for a different hobby that you can do with your hands, that isn't that expensive, chainmail is a way to go. You can make some beautiful pieces, and if you're in the SCA, you can make yourself some phenomenal armor that is combat worthy. Now, everyone that's in the SCA know that you have to use a certain type of ring. Aluminum's not going to do it for you. Most definitely, aluminum's not going to do it for you. I wouldn't go with titanium because it'd be way too expensive, or any of the other precious metals. But there are stainless steel rings, and there's also carbon steel rings that they sell, and they even sell them in bulk if you wanted to do that. And I'm going to go over some of the more basic weaves at a later session. This is just showing a basic Dragonscale weave, and these can get very advanced and very nice, just like my bracelet right here. So let me put this on. And something I do on these with the magnetic barrel latches, I put a safety chain, because the barrel latches, sooner or later this is going to get rubbed and knocked off. This just keeps it from being dropped off. I've lost a large amount of niobium in a 6-in-1 weave because I did not put in a safety chain on it. So would highly recommend doing a safety chain in any type of class like this. I know a lot of other mailers that do more of your typical, you're going to put it on and you're going to leave it on chainmail class. And I think I actually have one over here that I did on the Byzantine, which this one's already been sold, so don't even ask. But this one screws in. You can still take it off, but for the most part, this is designed. You can put this on. You don't really need to take it off ever. You can take a shower in this. This is all stainless steel. So this is a great piece. It feels really smooth in your hand, so you don't feel any barbs or anything like that. And I know that there's a big debate on saw cut versus plier cut. This is saw cut. If you do saw cut, you got to check your closures, because if you don't get the closure right, it will have a tendency to dig into the person. Okay, and that's one thing that I learned on this one, because some of my closures aren't the best. This is one of my first Dragonscale weave bracelets that I made out of the stainless and copper. So you have to realize that. Now, over the years, some of those ends kind of wear off. And another thing that you can do is that if you're doing this for production to sell, I tumble anything like this before it goes to the person. Be it the stainless, be it the anodized aluminum, I tumble it. Just as a washing tumble, but it also works on getting a lot of the metal fragments off of the edge of the saw cut. That's the biggest problem with saw cut. With your plier cut, you actually have an edge there. And if you do your closures right on that, check your closures. You do your closures correctly on that, it will not hurt the person. You won't even see it. And there's some people that are really good with their closures on the plier cut, and you won't even notice it. But those people are really good. They've been doing it for years. I've been doing chainmail for, I think, going on 6 years now. And it just started up as a simple hobby, and it's turned out to be one of my favorite things to do. So I hope that you enjoyed your time here. I hope I didn't bore you too much. Stay tuned. I'll be posting other videos going over the 4-in-1 chainmail, which is a basic weave, your 6-in-1, and that's the one that you usually see in the movies. It was in the Fellowship of the Ring. If you look at the chainmail, it's mostly 6-in-1 there. And I'm not sure which company did it, but I know a company did do that one. Also in the Chronicles of Riddick, in the soldier's chainmail on the dill, and a lot of the different armors that had chainmail. That was a 6-in-1 weave. It's a very tight weave. It's a very beautiful weave. I've done very few 8-in-1, and there's also a weave that's called the King's Weave, which is an 8-in-1, which is more like a 4-in-1. There's another 8-in-1 that is just an expansion of a 6-in-1, and I don't know if I have the proper rings to demonstrate a good 8-in-1. I'll have to check my rings and see if I have the appropriate diameter and gauge to do those. Now, like I said, if you like it, subscribe down below. If you're following me on Twitch, just follow me. Just ting that little deal. Just follow, and you'll see me come on. Usually I'm on in the evenings. Tonight, like I said, I'm only doing a recording. I'm sorry about that. I will actually post this on my Twitch after I edit it. The reason why I'm editing it, things happened here at the house. I had to help out my daughter with some cookies that she's actually actually they're giving away during Christmas. So, helped her out. So, things like that happen. But I will still try to post up something online and get y'all going. So, all I can say in closure, hey, keep on crafting. Keep on doing what you love to do. This is a beautiful world, and you got to follow your heart and continue to do what you love to do. So, till next time, keep on crafting.